Unbelievable truth. How 100,000 enemy wives faced an inspiring transformation beyond death. Jessica Taylor sat on her living room floor, sunlight streaming through the dust motes dancing in the air, but the warmth felt cold against her skin. The TV murmured in the background, another report from the conflict that had stolen her husband away. Missing in action, they repeated endlessly, like a mantra that bled into her day-to-day life. She might have counted the days since Brian had been declared lost, but she had started to lose track of time itself. At 32, with a 5-year-old daughter like a burst of sunshine demanding her attention, she felt as if shadows danced at the edges of every fleeting moment. Sorting through her husband's belongings, her heart grew heavy with each piece she touched. Memories flooded back: his laughter, the way his strong arms enveloped her, his fearless spirit seeping into every corner of their lives. What would he think of her now, shuffling through the fragments of their life while she pretended to be strong for Lily? These thoughts twisted in her mind, a cruel juxtaposition of love and weighty despair. Then, as she moved a forgotten shoebox, a dust-covered box spilled open. Inside lay a stack of letters, yellowed and crumpled, breathless secrets between women she had never known, enemy wives yearning for connection, sharing their stories of loss and courage. Jessica's breath hitched as she realized what she had stumbled upon. Here were voices once regarded as adversaries, now transformed by shared grief, each word dripped with emotion, resilient spark igniting in her heart. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But with those letters came an internal storm. Would connecting with these women, building bridges over chasms of grief, dishonor Brian's memory? Each new letter pushed at the edges of her resolve. While the women found strength, she felt herself unraveling. Fear invaded her, as deep and pervasive as the shadows stalking her at night. Would this project thrive or fracture her already fragile hold on her community? Whispers of betrayal wafted through town like a cold wind slashing through summer. As she consoled Lily, who missed her daddy, resentment grew among her neighbors. Friends turned ghostly silhouettes of sympathy, their eyes averted from her pain. The weight of their judgments bore down as she envisioned the memorial, an incomprehensible act of love for those once thought as enemies. She would be standing there, where duty and love both beckoned louder than ever before. The burden of expectation felt insurmountable. Was she really honoring him, or was she inviting scorn, dividing grief yet again? Heart racing, she found the one place she had always gone in moments of despair, her town. But as she prepared to unveil her plans at the next town meeting, her heart clenched in trepidation. The moment loomed heavy and unbearable, a hard reality where silence slithered like a regretful ghost. What would they do? Would they understand, or would they strip her raw with anger and betrayal? As the spotlight turned toward her, Jessica could feel everything change. The air thickened. Could she truly bear the weight of her heart, the dissonance of her purpose breaking through? Each tick of the clock bore down like a hammer ready to shatter her doubts. The divisive force of her choice hung between her and every face in the crowd, raising questions neither her heart nor her mind could answer. Would she find her footing on that precipice, or would she tumble into the darkness of her isolation? As Jessica stood before the town hall assembly, her pulse quickened, a steady drum in her ears drowning out the low hum of murmurs. The faces that surrounded her blurred into a collective mass, a sea of disbelief, skepticism, guarded sympathy. Somehow, every stare felt like a burden, each judgment a weight she could not shake. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to think of Brian. What would he want her to do? Would he cheer her on, or would he find this path too fraught with risk? As the memories flickered, a laugh, a smile, her resolve momentarily solidified. "Thank you for being here," she began, her voice quivering as if it were a fragile thread holding her sanity intact. She adjusted the notes she had prepared but quickly discarded them. This was something personal, it needed to come from her heart, unfiltered and raw. Most of you know my story. But in the wake of loss, I've stumbled upon another truth. The words fell as they flowed, raw and unrefined. The letters weighing down her decisions became the catalyst for her speech. She spoke of shared humanity, of sorrow, of the invisible barriers that grief had erected between herself and the enemy wives. With each story she recalled from those pages, she felt both liberated and vulnerable, standing firm even as her voice cracked at times. But as Jessica shared, she could sense the tide of tension growing, the veiled hostility lurking beneath the surface. Faces remained stony. Would they ever understand the healing potential in connection? Each question spiraled into new doubts. Would this proposal bring her community together or widen the rift already fraying at its seams? As she spoke of the women who had written, sharing their own tales of love and longing, reality hit hard. Were they not all seeking solace amid their shared pain? Politely skeptical nods at first morphed into crosses of uncertain dislike, the air thickening with confusion. The deeply entrenched biases of war resurfaced in their unspoken thoughts, and their comfort with steadfast anger toward the enemy proved sharper than she anticipated. "I'm not here to erase Brian's memory," she pressed. "He was my greatest gift, and I'm seeking a way to honor that while reaching out to those who share the exact hurt. Sometimes, our battle is not against each other, but against the grief that threatens to overwhelm us." The crowd remained divided. Some exchanged furtive glances, others shifted uncomfortably as if her words posed painful friction against long-held beliefs about loyalty and loss. Her heart sank, flickering with dread. The confrontation she had long dreaded began to take shape. Where was the support she needed? They were supposed to be united in grief, yet here she stood, carving out her own space against a backdrop of dissent. "I know there are questions," she said, her voice rising slightly, fueled by the sting of their confusion. "What I'm proposing is not an act of betrayal but of empathy. The true defining moment of humanity lies in our ability to connect even with those we've been told are our enemies." As murmurs swelled into a cacophony of dissent, Jessica felt a fire building within her, a fierce defiance mingled with the heaviness in her chest. It was not only a battle for acceptance of her views, it was a struggle for reclaiming her narrative. With shaky hands, she collected her resolve, ready to face whatever consequences awaited her. But the moment of truth hung inexplicably, the collective breaths of the townsfolk seeming to suspend all time in a fragile balance. Would she allow herself to descend into uncertainty, back into that heavy isolation? Or could she find a way to illuminate the darkness with her truth? As the noise escalated, pushing her deeper into a desperation she couldn't escape, a figure emerged from the crowd, eyes shining with an intensity that commanded attention. Jessica held her breath, knowing that this next confrontation might change everything. What would it reveal about their shared pain and herself? Jessica locked eyes with the figure emerging from the crowd, a woman whose face bore the marks of shared grief, but who also radiated a quiet strength. As she stepped forward, the atmosphere shifted slightly, as if the tension momentarily yielded to curiosity. This was not just any voice among the cacophony, there was a weight behind her presence, a unifying essence that Jessica felt instinctively. "Why?" the woman asked, her voice cutting through the noise like a sharp blade. "Why should we reach out to those who have caused us pain? You had someone to lose, and they have to bear the burden of the blame for that loss. Why risk your own suffering again?" The question hung in the air like a suspended stone, provoking reflections that permeated the assembly. Jessica's heart raced. This was the crux of her internal conflict, the very dilemma that had sparked her journey. The doubts brewed beneath her surface, and here they were, laid bare before her. She could feel the wall of resentment from the audience rising again, a barrier forged from loss that threatened to shut her down. Taking a deep breath, Jessica recognized a moment of revelation. This woman was speaking not just for herself but for many others who no doubt shared the same fear, the fear of vulnerability, the fear of allowing pain to creep back into their lives. "I know how terrifying it is to consider reaching out," Jessica responded, her voice no longer quaking but resolute. I felt that fear when I started this journey. But it's in that fear where I found my purpose. Brian was taken from me not just in body, but I felt his light dimming in the world. I realized that in my heartbreak, I had the opportunity to create something meaningful by understanding other hearts that were also breaking. As she spoke, Jessica felt the energies shifting within her, a realization dawning on her. Her strength had increased not through the absence of pain, but from confronting it. Each word felt like a brick, building a bridge through the unease, channeling her sorrow into a compelling force of unity. The woman's brow furrowed, uncertainty battling against the resolve forming in Jessica's voice. But how can you trust them? They could never understand what we've lost. Perhaps trust isn't the destination, but the path, Jessica suggested, heart pounding with the depth of her honesty. What if we focused not on trust, but on compassion? This is not about absolving the past but about weaving new narratives into our shared existence. We all carry pieces of pain. Isn't there power in recognizing that pain, sharing it, and turning it into a source of healing? Unwavering now, she scanned the faces around her. Some appeared contemplative, while others held on to their skepticism like a lifeline. She realized that addressing their fears head-on wasn't just an act of resilience, it was an invitation to explore the enriching nature of human emotion. What if I told you that together we can transform grief into something beautiful? Jessica continued, her eyes blazing with conviction. What if, in confronting this shared pain, we could honor our loved ones while also opening doors we assumed had shut? They deserve our memories, but we, too, deserve a chance to move forward. As Jessica finished speaking, a hushed silence enveloped the assembly, her heart thumping wildly in her chest. Perhaps the real battle was only just beginning, not just for acceptance, but to lead them through a darkness she herself had fought valiantly. In that moment, she realized her purpose went beyond finding solidarity, it was about catalyzing change woven through truth. A choice loomed larger than herself, and she would not retreat. The woman who had questioned her regarded her thoughtfully, a spark of contemplation igniting within her eyes. And if this doesn't work, she pressed, a challenge lingering about her. Jessica's mind raced, the statement hanging above them both, charged with a weight that demanded a response. What if her uncharted course fractured the community? What if the heart of her proposal became the undoing of what remained? Then we will have faced our fears together, she countered softly, grappling with her own doubt. And in that, we will have gained something invaluable, a voice. With every gaze in the room now weighted with potential, she took a step forward. In that instant, she sensed a flicker of possibility, something brewing beneath the surface. The moment was fraught with danger, but it also whispered promises of rekindled hope. The path ahead remained indistinct, shadowed by the complexities of their intertwined pasts, yet the urgency to forge ahead ignited a flame of determination within her. Would they take this leap of faith together? Or would fear cling too tightly to their hearts? In the turbulent silence, Jessica could almost taste the uncertainty, as clarity took form. The next question pondered would determine everything. How far was she truly willing to go for this mission, and what would be the cost? As her resolve steeled, the weight of a new decision beckoned. Was she ready to confront the ultimate test of her vision for healing? As the last echoes of her voice faded, Jessica stood in palpable stillness, the air thick with uncertainty. The woman who had asked the pointed question appeared transformed, caught somewhere between skepticism and curiosity. She held Jessica's gaze, and in that moment, Jessica recognized the two sides of a shared experience, the raw pain and the burgeoning hope. Jessica tightened her grip on the podium, grounding herself. Each heartbeat reverberated with the weight of her aspirations. She could feel the eyes of the audience analyzing every nuance of her expression, dissecting her conviction. Did they see only a vulnerable woman brandishing an optimistic illusion, or could they also glimpse the resilience forged through her suffering? Doubt darted through her mind, a familiar specter whispering taunts of inadequacy. Who was she to wield such power? Yet among the nerves thrumming in her chest, a new realization dawned. She wasn't just here to speak, she was here to inspire action. Each second stretched as she mentally fortified her resolve, her understanding morphing into urgency. Reformulating her thoughts would not suffice. Taking risks was her only path. "Let me tell you," she began, her voice now gaining strength, "every connection we make has the potential to heal not just ourselves, but those around us too. In reaching out, we give voice to that which is confounding and terrifying." The audience shifted slightly, a collective breath held, and Jessica sensed readiness lurking at the edge of their apprehension. She directed her focus toward the women closely knit within that shared grief tapestry. It struck her how much they craved connection, even as they ranged from hesitant to hostile. What if this moment wasn't merely an exchange of words, but a catalyst for transformation? "Let us confront our pain together," she proposed, intuition guiding her course. "Let us be vulnerable and embrace our grief, not as a burden but as a tool, and together we can channel it into understanding." A few heads bowed, and Jessica sensed the shroud of skepticism beginning to lift. In them, she recognized flickers of hope. Would they break the chains of their isolation, or would they remain trapped in their own sorrows? Her inner fire ignited, ideas raced through her mind, illuminating a vision she hadn't fully articulated until now. Perhaps she was meant to facilitate honest conversations, to provide tangible methods for transcendence over grief. They could transform this darkness into a shared journey. "I envision spaces," Jessica continued, her tone steadily rising with excitement, "where we can come together to express our fears, our hopes, and even celebrate the lives of those we've lost. Communities bound by shared stories instead of silence." The initial responses from the audience were tentative murmurs, but her conviction thrummed like a heartbeat in the hall. The possibility of shared experiences represented something new, an innovative healing process. Yet still, doubts flickered in the back of her mind. What if she had miscalculated their readiness? What if her expectations were misaligned with their actual needs? Jessica's ambition to lead a transformative movement using trust and compassion surrounded her like a cloak, shielding her from the chilling breeze of negativity. But she understood the precariousness of this mission. At any moment, the ground could shift beneath her, and she would have to stand firm. As she contemplated the emotional freight of her proposition, she sensed the weight of commitment crystallizing, a gravity she needed to embrace not only for herself but for the group before her. The anxiety surged once more within her, transformed into fervor. As the audience began to wrestle with the emerging possibilities, she withheld her breath, waiting for the inevitable response. Would they resonate with her mission, or would the fear-driven inertia prevail? The very essence of her professional pilgrimage hinged on this confrontation, to either spur movement or face resignation to silence. Yet, a new question lanced through her consciousness, potent and immediate. How far would she go to pursue this mission? Would she dare to challenge her own boundaries, pushing beyond fear and possible rejection? The silence remained, pregnant with anticipation, as the next words had the power to either anchor her vision firmly in reality or send it spiraling into uncertainty. "Let us break the silence together," she finally urged, her voice imbued with the urgency of change. The moment stretched, and Jessica held her breath, straddling the line between transformative hope and fragile assumption, ready to confront the depths of her resolve. As the silence enveloped her, a palpable tension coursed through the room. Jessica could feel the questioning gazes of the audience weighing down on her, the tension thickening like fog. At that moment, a single heartbeat seemed to resonate in the stillness, echoing not just her own, but a collective pulse of anticipation and fear. "Why should we trust you?" came a voice, sharp and direct from the back of the room. A woman's face, drawn with skepticism, broke through the shared silence. Jessica's stomach twisted. Doubt flooded back like an unwelcome tide, she could feel her resolve trembling under the weight of that challenge. But in the crucible of uncertainty, something stirred within her. "You shouldn't," she replied, steeling her voice, "not yet. But trust is earned through authenticity, vulnerability, and shared experience. If I were standing where you are, I'd be equally skeptical. I'm not here to sell you an illusion." This unexpected response startled both the speaker and the audience. Jessica, surprised by her own boldness, pressed on. I've walked through the depths of pain, and I know the isolation it breeds. I'm asking you not to follow me blindly, but to explore this path together. The woman shifted slightly, arms crossed tightly against her chest, eyes narrowed but thoughtfully engaged. Jessica sensed the shift, a transformation from dismissal to contemplation. Perhaps she wasn't just a voice in the wilderness, perhaps she was lighting a spark in someone else. Jessica's mind raced, drawing on every bit of her life's experience. What if she shared a piece of her own story? I lost my brother unexpectedly, she began, feeling the vulnerability wrap around her like chains, yet every word felt necessary. The world felt unstable. I questioned everything, my purpose, our connections. It's why I stand here today, trembling yet unapologetic. The murmurs in the audience shifted again, more questioning, more resonant. Here she was, owning her pain, flinging open the door to the rooms of grief many had long sealed shut. It is in our darkest moments, she continued, her voice steadying, that we can find the most profound connections. I learned that sharing our struggles can dissolve the loneliness that binds us. Jessica could see the woman's expression soften, a flicker of understanding challenging her initial skepticism. Could it be that the path forward began with this? With them? She pressed the advantage. Let us create a dialogue, she urged. Not just about loss, but about life, the lives we've lost and the lives we still lead. Let us experiment with stories, poetry, art, anything that brings our voices together. Each word felt like a stone cast into the water, rippling outward with purpose. Would they respond, or would they remain entrenched in silence and skepticism? The urgency of her mission coiled tighter around her. A newfound determination surged within her. Jessica had stopped needing validation from the outside, the fire within had ignited too fiercely for that. As she glanced into the crowd, she felt the stirrings of hope, a readiness to transcend their grief together. What's next? She implored, her eyes scanning theirs, igniting possibilities. Let us gather. Let us share. Let us build something together that acknowledges our pain but defies it. This moment is not just mine, it belongs to all of us. It is an invitation to rise. Jessica's pulse quickened in anticipation. No longer would she allow fear to hold sway over her aspirations. She was ready to embrace whatever came next, to confront the depths of vulnerability and connection. Just as she began to breathe easier, another voice broke through the budding rapport. But what if it fails? A man asked, skepticism layered with concern. Wading into the unknown felt exhilarating, but now she wrestled with a new specter. Could failure become a teacher instead of a threat? The weight of possibility loomed large, each path carried both risks and promises. As she prepared to respond, a question began to take root in her mind: would she have the courage to embrace her potential? Fearlessly, allowing it all, the vulnerability, the scrutiny, the chance of failure to drive her forward rather than hold her back. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself. Let us explore that fear together, she stated with renewed conviction, yet a flicker of doubt remained. Would the journey they were embarking on truly build a bridge, or would it spiral into something she couldn't reclaim? Jessica's heart raced as she met the man's gaze, the skepticism that had lingered throughout the room morphing into something surprisingly tangible. There was tension in the air, as if the audience was waiting for her to either rise to the challenge or retreat back into the shadows of doubt. The concept of failure hung heavily in the space between them. She could almost feel their collective breath held, each person grappling with their own fears mirrored in her confrontation. Failure is a possibility, she replied, allowing the weight of her admission to settle amidst the audience. But it also opens the door for growth. It teaches us resilience, ignites the fire within us to try harder, to adapt. Every person in this room has faced their own challenges, and I believe we can transform our pain into something meaningful. She paused, taking in the mix of furrowed brows and slight nods. It was unsettling, giving voice to what lingered unsaid. What if she wasn't enough? What if the walls they built remained unscalable? But something shifted within her in that moment, the realization that doubting her capacity to lead would only exacerbate the fears all around her. Have you ever stumbled while trying to learn something new? She continued, her tone inventive and inviting rather than defensive. We don't just walk away from hard lessons, we learn and move forward. I've fallen more times than I can count, and yet here I am, standing in front of you, daring to ask us to risk connecting with one another even in the possibility of failure. Jessica's words wrapped around her like a protective cloak. She could feel the tremors of her earlier nerves calming as she witnessed an emerging interest in her audience. They were beginning to see that vulnerability did not equate to weakness, rather, it opened the possibility for profound transformation. The woman from the back, initially critical, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Was Jessica's honesty breaking through that wall of skepticism? Jessica seized the moment, pivoting forward with authenticity. I invite you to think about a time when you faced a daunting challenge. Maybe it was losing someone, or a missed opportunity. Reflect on how you felt and what it taught you. It's easy to isolate in grief, but together, we can reshape those experiences into something beautiful. As the room stirred anew, she noticed subtle shifts. The woman's arms began to unfold, the man's furrowed brow softened. There was a flicker of connection, threads of that collective pulse intertwining with her own. One brave voice broke the stillness. What if we try it? Gather and share. It was the initial critic, and something in her tone signified a willingness to step beyond doubt and plunge into the unknown. An exhilarating wave roared within Jessica. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Here was the possibility of forging something genuine, not based on polished experiences or curated narratives, but on raw, authentic human experiences. Yes! Jessica exclaimed, her spirit soaring. Let us commit to it. A journey into the personal and uncomfortable, learning from each instance where we fear to tread. She envisioned a space where vulnerable stories could flow freely, the weight of isolation lifted, replaced by a shared understanding in collective strength. Minutes passed as ideas began to swirl in the room. Eventually, a plan materialized, a small gathering in her neighborhood, a chance to share stories, shortcomings, and perhaps celebrate the small victories that followed moments of failure. Yet, despite the growing excitement, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind: would her fledgling project unravel at the seams under scrutiny? With enthusiasm turning to a swirl of apprehension, she clutched onto her resolve. This step was a leap toward facing not only her fears but also redefining connection in the wake of pain. What if this gathering became a mirror, reflecting honesty back at her, unveiling parts of herself she hadn't yet fully acknowledged? As plans solidified, the tension morphed into palpable anticipation. The next hurdle awaited: the reality of facing her own story within a circle, waiting to fully unveil the rawness that had served as her motivation. With resolve thickening in her chest, she took a deep breath. What revelations would emerge when she allowed herself to share not just the struggle but the deep scars that still colored her journey? The next chapter had only just begun, and Jessica was ready to embrace whatever might unfold. The morning light filtered through her kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of last night's brainstorming session, notebooks strewn across the table, colorful notes pinned to a board, each inscribed with ideas that cracked open like fragile eggshells. Jessica sat with her coffee, heart racing nervously at the thought of the gathering just days away. What if everything fell apart? It was the tang of fear that kept her on edge, but soon joined by a warm undertone of resolve, the kind born from necessity, the need to connect and evolve. She flipped through her notes, skimming the key points she wanted to address. Vulnerability, connection, authenticity, each word felt heavy with importance. Yet, the more she focused, the louder the inner critic became. What do you know about leading? It whispered. What if your story isn't enough? The voice nagged at her, each jab a reminder of her past failures, reinforcing the belief that she had yet to earn her place in this transformative vision. With an effort, she pushed aside the doubts, recalling how her earlier engagement had shifted the energy of the room. All it took was one person to spark a movement. If they could embrace discomfort together, perhaps it could resonate beyond her own limitations. She had taken the first step towards a possibility, and that moment of commitment contained a power she had not fully acknowledged yet. Later that day, she drove through her neighborhood, the familiarity of her surroundings grounding her as she sought inspiration. She noticed a small bookshop, its sign swinging gently in the breeze, an invitation or a challenge. Drawing in a breath of determination, she parked the car and stepped inside, letting the crisp air wrap around her. The scent of old pages mingled with fresh coffee emanating from a corner cafe, infusing her with a sense of calm. While wandering among the shelves, she picked up a few books that spoke to her. As she flipped through their pages, she came across a title about resilience. The stories inside mirrored her struggles, detailing the journeys of people who faced unimaginable hardships yet found ways to rise again. Each narrative resonated deeply with her, offering glimpses of strength buried within her own life's chapters. Jessica's presence at the bookstore wasn't just a pleasant escape, it became an impromptu strategy session. She envisioned using these stories to spark dialogue during her gathering, a catalyst to let others share their own narratives, fostering an open exchange devoid of judgment. She felt a fresh wave of adrenaline. This wasn't just her journey, it was about the collective stories waiting to be unfurled. Back at home, she arranged her notes, weaving in the insights she had gathered. The gathering transformed in her mind. It was more than sharing pain. It could be a space for empowerment, where stories became tools for healing. As the concepts crystallized, the nagging self-doubt morphed into a thrilling anticipation. Yet, she still felt a pang of uncertainty beneath her excitement. What if the very truths she sought to explore, her own vulnerabilities, turned into a burden instead of a bridge? Each raised question felt like an anchor, weighing her down. Was she ready to expose the raw truths that shaped her? The fear that wrestled with hope tightened around her like a vice as she rehearsed her story in the mirror, pondering how much to reveal. There was a distinct chance that she could revisit the pain she had worked so hard to bury, and the balance between strength and fragility felt perilously thin. As night draped over her home and the shadows grew long, she wrestled with her decision. The gathering could serve as a reflection, a mirror not just for those who came, but for herself. Would she rise to the challenge or remain ensnared in fear? Determined to press forward, she closed her eyes, imagining the faces of those who would gather in a week, their expectations, their stories, their struggles. The weight of their shared humanity settled, igniting a flicker of courage within her. Jessica's once distant hopes coalesced into a singular question: what hidden strength could be unearthed when vulnerability was embraced? The answer lingered tantalizingly close, just out of reach, whispering of possibility, urging her to confront the very fabric that had defined her journey thus far. The hour of reckoning drew near, and with it, the unmistakable urge to face her own past head-on. Could she brave the tempest of her hidden scars to seek a greater understanding? She knew then that the path ahead would not be easy, nevertheless, it was hers to walk, illuminated by the flicker of newfound faith and the thrill of transformation yearning to unfold. Soon, she'd have to confront the shadows lurking in her mind, and there was no turning back now. Jessica awoke the next morning with a knot of anxiety in her stomach, the relentless ticking of the clock underscoring the urgency of her impending task. The gathering was now only days away, and the walls of her home seemed to close in as she contemplated the weight of what she had to convey. It wasn't merely her story, it was a tapestry of truths that encompassed pain, resilience, and potential redemption. She could almost feel the whispers of doubt wrap around her again, threatening to stifle the flame of inspiration she had ignited the previous evening. She stood in front of her mirror once more, rehearsing her thoughts, trying to channel the energy she had felt at the bookstore. Each glance revealed a woman who looked determined, but, deep within, she sensed a chasm of fear. Many could recall their triumphs, but she was terrified of sharing her defeats. Her mind spiraled around past failures, and she quickly dismissed those thoughts, clenching her fists to push away the mental fog. "You're ready," she muttered to her reflection, willing herself to believe those words. In an effort to transform her anxiety into action, Jessica decided to take a practical approach. She grabbed her notebook and headed to the local cafe, where the vibrant buzz of conversation mixed with the rich aroma of coffee filled her with a sense of belonging. If she was to lead others, she needed to forge connections within herself first. Settling into a window seat, she let her pen dance across the page, jotting down thoughts about her journey and how each experience had shaped her. The sun filtered through the glass, casting warm rays over her list of potential discussion points. She wrote about her upbringing, the moments of shame, and the courage it took to break away from the confines of expectation. As her narrative took shape, she realized the impact of her words was not only grounded in personal experience but also in vulnerability. The connections she hoped to create with her audience relied on her ability to show them the beauty found in scars her own and theirs. After a few hours, she felt buoyed, like she had unearthed pieces of a puzzle that had lain scattered for too long. The idea of sharing not just her successes, but the messy, imperfect parts of her journey resonated as an act of courage. It became clear to her that everyone harbored their individual battles, some cloaked in silence. She could set a precedent for others to speak, to resonate, to heal. Yet, as exhilaration crept back in, so did the pressing question, would they listen? What if they dismissed her? Lurking beneath her excitement was a heaviness, a fear that perhaps her story would not find fertile ground. Jessica pulled the pen away as she reflected on that question, her heart racing with a sense of urgency. She longed to break this cycle of self-doubt. Returning home, an idea sparked in her mind, electrifying her thoughts. What if she opened the floor for others to share their stories first, creating a reciprocal space for vulnerability? That notion struck her with a powerful clarity. If she could facilitate a platform for others, perhaps she would find her footing within the narratives shared. Detaching her own story from the need for validation felt liberating. It shifted her focus from pressure to purpose, igniting a thrilling anticipation for the gathering ahead. Jessica embraced the thought of an evolving dialogue, one that would allow each person to unveil their truths without fear of judgment. As evening enveloped her home, the flickering candle flames cast shadows dancing across the walls, reminiscent of the conflicting emotions still swirling within her. The fear remained, but alongside it grew a burgeoning sense of community. Each individual entering her space could become a testament to her belief in human resilience. A single thought anchored her: this gathering could become not just a reckoning with her past, but the spark of a greater, shared journey of healing. With every potential participant she envisioned, the tension shifted into something more profound, an opportunity to create a space that championed authenticity. Standing before her mirror once last time, she breathed deeply, knowing that the coming days held the possibility of radical transformation, not just for her, but for everyone who dared to step into the light with her. Little did she realize, the true challenge lay not in her narrative alone, but in the profound revelations awaiting her once she opened the door to the stories that would unfold. What hidden truths remained tethered within the voices of others? How would her own journey intertwine with theirs, challenging her to grow beyond her own understanding? She felt the shivers of excitement and trepidation course through her. Unbeknownst to her, the moment of greatest discovery was drawing closer. The following days blurred into a whirlwind of preparation and introspection. As Jessica moved around her home, she oscillated between bursts of energy and moments of crippling doubt. The room where she planned to host the gathering transformed into a sanctuary, adorned with cushions and soft lighting, designed to create a safe haven. Yet, with each detail she meticulously arranged, a nagging voice whispered, "What if no one comes?" She took to her notebook again, writing down affirmations to counteract her spiraling thoughts, but the act felt mechanical, lacking the depth of her earlier revelations. Part of her craved solitude to prepare, but another side was desperate for connection. Could she truly lead this gathering if she herself was not fully grounded in her intentions? The question loomed large. In a moment of frustration, she decided to reach out to a few close friends, seeking their thoughts on her plans. She needed affirmation, perhaps even a lifeline of support. The text messages flowed, and as she hit send, a wave of vulnerability washed over her. What if they were dismissive? What if they thought her endeavor was unnecessary? She held her breath until the first replies chimed in, a cascading surge that buoyed her spirits. They expressed excitement and willingness to share their own stories, and suddenly, the fragmented pieces of her idea began to coalesce into something tangible. As the day approached, Jessica wandered through her mental outline, considering how she would initiate the conversation. Would it be too formal to start with her own story? Or would that undermine the collective essence she sought to cultivate? She jotted down various opening lines, but each felt like an inadequate preamble to the emotional gravity she intended to address. That evening, she hosted a small dinner as a final rehearsal of her plans, bringing together her friends who had expressed interest. They laughed and shared light-hearted stories, but as the laughter faded, the undercurrents of deeper experiences surfaced, small acknowledgments of struggles, moments when life felt unbearable. Jessica could feel the weight of their words wrap around the room, and a realization struck her: the gathering was not just a platform for sharing, it was a movement of healing, a chance for everyone to lift the weight of untold stories. Sometime during the dinner, an unexpected question slipped from her lips: "What does vulnerability mean to you?" The table fell silent, and she watched as faces absorbed the question. Each friend reflected deeply, revealing layers of their own understanding and hesitations. In that moment, Jessica felt the tentative threads of a shared connection weave themselves into something greater. They spoke about regret, fear, and the challenges of authenticity, and in their shared exposure, she felt her own fears begin to soften. Later, as they cleared the dishes and prepared to part ways, one friend, Mia, leaned toward Jessica with a knowing look. "You have a gift for bringing us together," she said. "Don't forget that you're not just sharing a story, you're giving us permission to be real." Those words struck Jessica with considerable force, invigorating her resolve. She realized that her fear of rejection paled in comparison to the value of creating a space for others to invite them to share the burdens they carried silently. If she wanted to encourage vulnerability in others, she would have to wield her own story with courage and grace. That night, sleep eluded her as her mind spun with possibilities. She could feel the weight of her journey pressing on her chest, but it felt lighter. A transformation was brewing within her, precipitated by her willingness to connect with others. The pressure she once held turned into anticipation, a thrilling tide that surged closer by the minute. As morning broke and the sun streamed into her room, illuminating her path, a final thought crystallized: this was not merely about her, it was about solidarity, shared healing, and the collective strength they would discover when they unveiled their stories. She could not turn back now. The day of the gathering had arrived, and as Jessica looked around the warmly lit room, anticipation mingled with a thin veil of apprehension. What stories would be shared? What buried truths would surface? She felt the tremors of potential change ripple through her. This moment could redefine her understanding of resilience. But as she prepared to greet her guests, a piercing question lingered in her mind: would she be able to embrace the chaos that would inevitably ensue? How would she respond if the stories unearthed feelings she had yet to face herself? The air crackled with uncertainty, and Jessica took a deep breath, steeling herself for the revelations that lay ahead. As the first guests trickled in, Jessica felt a rush of warmth surge through her. Each face was a reminder that this gathering wasn't simply a product of her solitary journey, it was a shared experience, a tapestry woven from many threads of grief, resilience, and hope. She welcomed each person with a sincere smile, absorbing their nervous energies as they entered the room. The soft lighting created an inviting ambience, and her heart beat with excited apprehension. They settled into the cushions, laughter easing the initial tension, but beneath their light banter lay a current of shared understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of the complexities waiting to be unveiled. Jessica opened the circle with her story, her voice steady as she began to share both joy and sorrow. "I lost my husband in a tragic conflict," she started, allowing herself to delve into the depths of that heartache. "But instead of allowing grief to barricade me, I connected with those whom I had been taught to see as enemies, other women in my situation. Our shared losses brought us together, igniting a mission rather than just mourning." As she spoke, she recognized the weight of her truth settling softly in the room. Friends offered nods of empathy while a few new faces reflected both curiosity and hesitation. Jessica capably navigated the intimacy of the space, telling them how the letters had opened worlds she never anticipated. She gently reminded them, our journeys may be different, but they converge in a place of respect and understanding. At her invitation, one by one, her guests began to share their own stories, the struggles they faced, the losses that had shaped them. Each revelation built upon the last, creating a bridge of vulnerability that allowed connection to form. A woman named Sophie spoke of losing her sister in a car accident, how it ignited her battle with depression. Another, Mark, revealed how losing his father had left deep impressions that he couldn't bear to confront until now. With each new narrative, Jessica realized the strength that blossomed from shared vulnerability. The connections they formed were transcending the solitude of pain. No longer was this merely an exploration of loss, it had transformed into an empowering exchange, igniting conversations that traversed raw emotions, sometimes even cathartic laughter. The fear of judgment crumbled away as they uncovered deeper layers of resilience. Midway through the gathering, Jessica felt her initial fears dissolve in the rush of solidarity they built. It dawned on her that this was the fulfillment of her journey, not just clamoring to be heard, but lifting others to not only share but to listen too. She had wanted to create a safe space, yet in reality, it was that very space that had absorbed her fears and transmuted them into strength. The hour approached their closing circle, and Jessica sensed an urgency within her, a call to capture this moment. What if we keep this going? She proposed, her eyes alight with the potential of their newly shared collective energy. Let us create a regular space where we can continue to connect, reflect, and empower each other. Her declaration was met with a mixture of surprise and eagerness, and she recognized the spark ignite across her guests' faces. The room buzzed with excitement around forming a community where they could explore narratives of resilience together, a venture to be anchored in empathy. As she gazed around the room filled with affirmations and warm agreement, pride washed over her. For the first time, she realized that her journey had evolved to encompass not just her grief, but the heart of all those who had gathered. By sharing her vulnerabilities, by creating this now palpable network of stories and emotions, Jessica had accomplished more than just a personal triumph. She had found her place as a leader, guiding others towards their strength, unearthing shared truths, and validating their experiences. With the evening fading away, laughter and connections blended into a rich fabric of healing. As she locked eyes with each face around her, she felt the gravity of their collective understanding. They were now embarking on a journey together, one that embraced sameness and difference alike. In that moment, Jessica understood a fundamental truth: genuine connections carved pathways through grief, yielding not only personal healing but an overarching purpose that transcended individual hardships. The weight of her journey began to lift, allowing room for inspiration and solidarity to flourish. She left that gathering exhausted, yet invigorated. She had achieved something substantive, not merely for herself but for this unassuming circle of individuals. As she closed the door behind her, the echoes of laughter intermingled with whispered conversations, and she'd become an architect of hope, building bridges across shared journeys that delved deep into the human experience. No longer burdened by her grief, but anchored by it instead, Jessica had transformed not just her own path, but those of others seeking connection. Their next meeting would be another opportunity for growth, an emotional voyage yet to unfold. Her heart swelled with a sense of fulfillment that she had yearned for so deeply, knowing this was the beginning of something profoundly meaningful. Jessica had stepped into her power, transcending the confines of her grief, and confronting her vulnerability with courage and compassion. Now she felt worthy not only of her past but of the journey that lay ahead, bathed in a light she had gleaned from the collective triumph of sharing their stories together. Now more than ever, she was ready to take her place in this new landscape of hope and healing, an unwavering place she had fought hard to carve out. The stories would grow, and so would they all. Together, they would nurture connection while ushering forth the remarkable journey that awaited them. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.